My mother abandoned me at 13. Reappears when dad dies and scams me out of $177,000 faking emergency surgery. But I found her in Paris with my money and sued her until she had nothing left. I'm 29 years old, work in digital marketing, and what I'm about to tell you is probably going to sound so ridiculous that you'll think I made it up. But I swear every word is true. My mother, who I hadn't seen in years, scammed me out of $177,000 from the inheritance my dad left me and went on vacation to Paris with my half-sister. Yes, you read that right, Paris, with my money. While she was supposedly in the hospital recovering from emergency spinal surgery. But let me start from the beginning, because none of this makes sense without context. My parents got divorced when I was 8 years old. It wasn't one of those friendly divorces where everyone stays friends and celebrates Christmas together. No. It was one of those ugly ones, where they'd scream at each other on the phone, and I'd hide in my room with headphones on. My mom, Diane, remarried like 2 years later to a guy named Richard, and then they had Megan. From the moment Megan was born, it was like I ceased to exist, for my mom. Not overnight, it was gradual, but obvious enough that even as a kid, I could tell. I remember at first I'd go to her house every other weekend, and it was weird but not horrible. Richard was never directly mean to me. He just ignored me. And my mom was so obsessed with Megan that I was basically just another piece of furniture in the house. But the moment that changed everything, the moment I still remember perfectly, even though it's been like 16 years, was when I was 13. I was in the living room watching TV. I think it was a Saturday afternoon, and I heard Richard talking to my mom in the kitchen. They weren't yelling or anything, but the house was small and the walls were thin, like you could hear everything. And I heard Richard say, "We don't need her coming around anymore. Megan is growing up and needs her space. Plus, it's uncomfortable for everyone." And I waited for my mom to say something, anything, to defend me. But all I heard was silence. And then she said, "You're right. I'll talk to Michael." I sat there, still watching TV, but not really seeing anything. And in that moment, something broke inside me. I didn't cry, or scream, or make any kind of scene. I just called my dad and told him I wanted to live with him full time. He came to pick me up that same day, didn't ask questions, just packed my stuff and we left. My mom didn't even come downstairs to say goodbye. She stayed upstairs with Megan. That was basically the last time I spoke to her in any meaningful way for years. She'd call on my birthday sometimes, send a card at Christmas. But that was it. And I was okay with that. Or at least that's what I told myself. My dad, Michael, was amazing. He never talked bad about my mom in front of me, though I'm sure he wanted to. He supported me in everything, came to all my school plays, helped me with math homework even though he hated math, taught me how to drive, was there when I had my first heartbreak. He was basically mom and dad at the same time, you know? I studied marketing in college, got a good job after graduating, and my life was pretty normal and happy. Dad worked in accounting for a medium-sized company. Nothing fancy, but he did well. And it was just the two of us against the world, I guess. Then like 2 years ago, right after I turned 27, Dad started feeling sick. At first we thought it was the flu or something, but it wouldn't go away. He went to the doctor, and after a bunch of tests, they diagnosed him with late-stage pancreatic cancer. When I say late stage, I mean the doctor basically told us he had maybe 6 months, and that was being optimistic. It was like the floor disappeared from under my feet. My dad, my favorite person in the entire world, the only family I really had, was dying and there was nothing anyone could do about it. The next 4 months were the worst of my life. Dad deteriorated fast, much faster than the doctors thought. I left my job temporarily to take care of him, and it was horrible watching him decline like that. This man who had been my rock, who always knew what to say and what to do, was becoming a shadow of himself. He died on a Tuesday morning. In the hospital, I was holding his hand. I still can't think about it without my throat closing up. Turns out Dad had been very careful with his finances, his whole life. He had a considerable life insurance policy, savings, investments, I didn't even know existed. After paying for the funeral and all the debts he had, which were basically nothing because he was super responsible with money, I was left with $300,000. It's an insane amount of money, I know. And I felt guilty receiving it because it meant Dad was dead. I put most of it in a savings account, not knowing what to do with it. I went back to work after a month, trying to keep busy and not think too much. Then, Like 3 months after Dad died, I got a message from my mom on Facebook. We hadn't talked in years, literally years, and suddenly she appears in my messages. The message said something like, "Victoria, I know it's been many years and you're probably angry with me, but I need to talk to you. Richard died 2 months ago, and I've been thinking a lot about how I handled things with you. Could we meet for coffee? I should have known right then. I should have seen all the red flags, but I was so destroyed by Dad's death, so desperate to have some kind of family connection, that I said yes. We met at a Starbucks near my apartment, and when she arrived, it was weird. She looked older, obviously. She was like 52 at the time, and she looked tired. She started crying as soon as we sat down, saying she was so sorry, that she'd been a terrible mother, that she'd abandoned me when I needed her most, blah, blah, blah. And I, being an idiot, believed her. Or wanted to believe her. I don't know. We started meeting regularly, like once a week. She'd tell me about her life with Richard, which apparently had been an unhappy marriage, that he controlled her, that she never had her own money. She'd tell me about Megan, who was now 19 and in community college studying something related to graphic design. She'd show me pictures of her, and I'd try to feel something, some sisterly connection. But there was nothing there. But with my mom, I don't know. I started to feel like maybe we could rebuild something, like maybe not everything was lost. This went on for like 4 months. We'd meet, talk, she'd ask about my work, I'd tell her superficial things. I never mentioned Dad's inheritance. Something in my gut told me not to, though I didn't know why at the time. Then one night, it was like 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, she called me crying hysterically. "Victoria," she said between sobs, "I need your help. It's an emergency." My heart raced. I thought something horrible had happened. "What happened?" I asked. "Are you okay?" And she told me this elaborate story about how she'd been having terrible back problems, that she'd gone to the doctor that day, and they'd done an emergency MRI, and that she had a severe herniated disc that needed immediate surgery or she could become paralyzed. She told me the doctor had given her a referral to a specialist who could operate on her in 2 weeks, but that she needed an upfront payment of $20,000 because her insurance didn't cover that type of specialized surgery, that it was some new procedure that used I don't know what, advanced technology. She was crying so much, saying she didn't have that money, that she didn't know what to do, that she was terrified of ending up in a wheelchair, and God, I swallowed it all. I told her not to worry, that I would help her. But then she kept talking. She said that after the surgery she was going to need specialized physical therapy, that the whole process was going to cost like $200,000 total, that her insurance basically didn't cover any of this. And she asked me, and this is where I should have hung up the phone. She asked me if Dad had left me anything when he died. I told her yes, that he'd left me some money. "How much?" she asked. I told her enough to help her. I didn't want to say the exact amount. Something still held me back. The next few days were chaos. She was texting me constantly, saying the pain was unbearable, that she could barely move, that she needed the surgery as soon as possible. She sent me pictures of prescriptions, of doctors' reports that looked legit, of everything. She even sent me a picture of herself in the hospital, lying on a gurney wearing a hospital gown, looking miserable. Megan also started texting me, saying Mom was really bad, that she really needed my help, that we were family and families support each other. I finally agreed to give her the money. I went to the bank, filled out all the necessary paperwork, and transferred $177,000 to my mom's account. It was almost everything I had left after some expenses I'd had in those months. My plan was to give her the rest after the surgery, if she needed it. But I wanted to see how things went first. She was so grateful, crying on the phone, telling me I was an angel, that she would never forget this, that she'd pay me back as soon as she could. She told me the surgery was scheduled for that Friday, that it was going to be at a specialized hospital in another state. I think she said Massachusetts or something like that, because that's where the best specialist in the country for this type of procedure was. She said Megan was going with her to take care of her during recovery, that they'd be there for like 2 or 3 weeks. I wished her luck, told her to keep me updated on how everything went. Friday came and went. I didn't hear anything from her all day, which I thought was normal because she was in surgery. Saturday, nothing either. I sent her messages asking how everything went, if she was okay, but no response. Sunday, I started to really worry. Monday morning, while I was at work trying not to panic, I got a message from my friend Sarah. Sarah and I met in college and we're still close. She knows the whole story with my mom and knew we'd been reconnecting. Sarah's message said, "Victoria, you need to see this." And she sent me screenshots of Megan's Instagram account. In the photos, Megan was in Paris. In Paris, France, in front of the Eiffel Tower, at the Louvre, at some fancy cafe drinking champagne, with the caption, "Living my best life in the city of love," and a bunch of emojis. The photos were dated from Saturday, one day after my mom's supposed emergency surgery. I stared at my phone screen, like unable to process what I was seeing. I went to Megan's Instagram account myself, because part of me couldn't believe it. And there it was, photo after photo. Megan in Paris, clearly having fun, clearly not taking care of our mother in any hospital. And then I saw a photo where both of them were together, my mom and Megan, toasting with wine glasses in front of the illuminated Eiffel Tower at night. My mom, who supposedly had just come out of spinal surgery and should be in bed recovering, was on vacation in Paris with my half-sister. I felt like someone had kicked me in the stomach. I literally had to sit down because my legs wouldn't hold me up. Everything clicked suddenly. All the calls, all the tears, all the pleading. I'd been scammed. My own mother had scammed me. Using the money my dad, the only father I really had left me. She'd spent it on a luxury vacation to Europe while making me believe she was in the hospital. I called the phone number she'd given me for the supposed hospital in Massachusetts. It was a real hospital. Yes. But when I asked for my mom using her full name, they told me they had no record of her, not as a current patient, nor scheduled for surgery. I called her cell phone like 20 times. Nothing. I texted her. Nothing. I texted Megan. Obviously nothing either. I immediately called my bank and froze the rest of the money I'd set aside to give her. Later. Luckily, I still had like $23,000 that I hadn't transferred to her. Then I started looking for more evidence, because part of me still couldn't believe this was real. I checked Megan's Instagram account backward, and she'd been posting from Paris for days. I saw saved stories where you could see them shopping at designer stores, eating at expensive restaurants, staying at a hotel that when I Googled it cost like $500 a night. My mom finally responded like 4 days later. She sent me a message saying she was sorry, that she'd been very weak after surgery and hadn't been able to use her phone. I sent her the Instagram screenshots. There was silence for like 2 hours, and then she called me. She started with excuses, saying Megan had gone to Paris before her surgery because it was a trip she'd had planned for a long time, that the photos were old, that Instagram had uploaded them automatically. I told her the photos had dates and geolocation from 3 days ago. Then she changed the story, saying that after surgery, the doctor had recommended a trip to reduce stress, that Paris was therapeutic, that she was going to pay me back. I asked her the doctor's name, the hospital's name, the surgery confirmation number. She couldn't give me anything. Either she gave me vague information or said she didn't remember because she was medicated. I told her I'd already called the hospital and they'd confirmed she was never there. There was a long silence, and then she hung up. I didn't hear from her for weeks, but Megan did contact me. She sent me a long message trying to explain, saying Mom really had back problems, that the Paris trip had been a last-minute opportunity they couldn't refuse, that they were going to pay me back as soon as they got back, and Mom started working again. I asked her what Mom worked at. She said she didn't have a job yet, but was going to look soon. It was all lie after lie after lie. A week later, my mom emailed me what was supposedly the hospital bill. The bill was so obviously fake that even I, who knows nothing about medical bills, could tell. It was made in Word, had spelling errors. The hospital logo looked pixelated like they'd downloaded it from Google Images. It was insulting that they thought I was that stupid. Then Megan did something incredible. She created a GoFundMe with the story that they were stranded in Paris without money to get back, that someone had stolen their credit cards, that they needed urgent help. She put up pictures of them in Paris looking desperate, though clearly the photos were from when they were having a good time, and started sharing it on Facebook asking for donations. Several distant relatives who didn't know the whole story donated, including my cousin Laura, who wrote to me asking if I knew anything about this. I told Laura the whole truth. She was shocked because apparently Megan had also asked her for money a few months ago with some other excuse, and she'd given her like $3,000 that was never returned. Between the two of us, we started contacting other relatives, and it turned out I wasn't the only one. My mom and Megan had been scamming half the family tree with similar stories, always invented medical emergencies or financial crises. They eventually came back from Paris, because obviously they ran out of money. My mom tried to contact me again, this time with a story about how it had all been a misunderstanding, that she really needed the money to pay urgent debts and didn't know how to tell me, that the Paris trip had been Megan's idea and she'd only gone to make her happy. As if that made the situation better somehow. The next thing that happened was my mom's landlord contacted me. Apparently, she'd told him that I had promised to pay her rent for 3 months while she recovered from her surgery, and since he hadn't received payment, the landlord was charging me. I explained the whole situation to him, showed him evidence that I'd never made such a promise, and he understood. But he warned me that my mom owed him like 4 months of rent and was about to be evicted. Part of me felt a little sorry. A very small part. But most of me was so furious, so betrayed, that I couldn't feel anything but rage. This woman had abandoned me when I was 13, had reappeared only when she needed something, had manipulated me using my grief over Dad's death, had stolen the money my dad left me, and now was trying to use my name to scam other people. I hired a lawyer. It wasn't cheap, but I decided it was worth it. I sued my mom for fraud and for defamation, for telling the landlord I'd promised to pay her rent. The legal process was long and exhausting. It basically took almost a full year between hearings and paperwork and all that shit. But in the end, the court ruled in my favor. They ordered her to return the $177,000 plus interest and legal costs. Of course, she doesn't have that money. According to my lawyer, she claimed everything had been spent, and she had no way to pay it. The court established a payment plan where she has to give me a portion of any income she has until the debt is paid, which will probably take years, if it ever gets fully paid. Honestly, I don't care about the money anymore. I'm never going to get it all back, and I know it. What mattered was the principle. It was proving that she couldn't do this and get away with it. I blocked my mom and Megan on everything. Phone, social media, email, everything. I told all the relatives that if they asked about me, not to give them any information. Some relatives told me I was being too harsh, that she was my mother after all, that families should forgive each other. But my grandma, my dad's mom, told me something I'll never forget. She told me, "Victoria, family isn't who shares your blood, it's who's there when life gets tough. Your dad was your family. I'm your family." But she stopped being that a long time ago. It's been like 8 months since all this. I haven't heard anything from my mom or Megan directly, though Laura tells me from time to time that she sees them posting on Facebook as if nothing happened, making plans, going out, living their lives. It doesn't affect me like it used to. At first, I'd get angry every time I heard something about them. But now it's more like indifference. They're people who existed in my life, hurt me, and now they no longer exist to me. When the money I have left from Dad, I invested well, with help from a financial advisor. I still work at my marketing company. In fact, they gave me a promotion a few months ago. I'm going to therapy, which helps a lot. My therapist says what happened was a form of financial and emotional abuse, and that it's okay to feel what I feel, that I don't have to forgive if I don't want to. And the truth is, I don't want to. Not now, maybe never. Sometimes I think about how Dad would react if he knew what happened. He'd probably get really angry, but he'd also tell me he raised me to be stronger than this, to not let toxic people ruin my life. And he's right, I guess. I'm still here, still moving forward, and they no longer have any power over me. That's the best I can do with this shitty situation, right?